Hello. My name is Emma. That's how I usually start at the Coastal Pines retirement residence whenever someone new joins our weekly Getting to Know You group. A room full of gray hair, slow walkers, and soft-spoken voices. Hello. My name is Emma. It sounds simple, polite, but beneath it lies a whole world that no one asks about. I'm 76. A widow. A former high school literature teacher who used to quote Shakespeare and Maya Angelou to teenagers too distracted to care. Once upon a time, I was someone. Now, I'm just Miss Collins in room 108, who likes peppermint tea and never finishes her soup. The days here are quiet. Too quiet. Sometimes, my room smells faintly of pine-scented disinfectant, and whatever lavender spray the staff uses to cover the scent of aging. Out the window, I can see the Monterey Bay, or at least a sliver of it between the branches of the cypress trees. Most days are foggy, moody, like the ocean knows we're waiting for something but doesn't know what. People think retirement homes are all bingo nights and cheerful hallway greetings. And yes, we have those, but there's also silence. A kind of forgetting not just of memories, but of people. I used to be Mrs. Collins, the teacher who made kids fall in love with poetry. Now I'm the quiet woman who keeps to herself and folds her napkin precisely in half before every meal. I have a daughter, Lindsay. She lives in Palo Alto. Very busy. A marketing executive or maybe a director now. I forget which. She calls sometimes. Visit less. When she does visit, her voice is all clipped politeness and glances at her phone. Just checking in. Mom, how are things? Great. Gottaron. Big client meeting. She always brings me something, a book, a scarf. Once a Bluetooth speaker I didn't know how to use. I think she's trying. In her way. But sometimes trying feels a lot like obligation. She didn't always used to be this way. There was a time she'd climb into bed with me after a nightmare and whisper, "Tell me a story, Mama." I'd stroke her hair and make up wild adventures about flying cats and pirate librarians. She'd fall asleep clutching my hand like I was her whole world. Now, I'm a calendar reminder. There are moments, brief flashes, where I wonder, did I fade out of her life? Or did she push me out? Or did life just move too fast for either of us to notice? Maybe both. Maybe neither. Maybe that's what getting older feels like, a slow, gentle erasure. Even the staff here, though kind, look at us through a soft lens of sympathy, like they've already filed us under the fading. When they talk to me, it's always a few decibels too loud. Do you need help with your medication? Emma, no. Karen, I'm old, not deaf. I used to correct them. Now I just smile. There's a photo of Richard, my husband, on my nightstand. He passed 6 years ago. Pancreatic cancer. Quick. Too quick. We had planned to take a cruise up the Alaskan coast for our 50th anniversary. He didn't make it to 48. Some nights, I whisper to the photo like he can still hear me. You wouldn't believe this place. Rich, you'd hate the soup. So yes. Hello, my name is Emma. I'm 76. And somewhere, beneath the cardigan and the silver hair, I am still someone. But even I've started to wonder, does anyone remember? And more importantly, do I? Emma Collins, the nurse, called gently, peeking her head into the common room. There's someone here to see you. From a law office. A law office. My heart skipped, not from excitement, but confusion. At my age, any surprise visit brings questions. I followed her slowly to the front reception, bracing myself with each step already imagining something had gone wrong with my retirement account or Medicare. He stood in a gray suit that didn't quite fit the relaxed vibe of Monterey. Mid-40s. Brown leather briefcase in one hand. An expression too serious for a Tuesday afternoon. "Miss Craig Collins," he asked. "I'm Mark Shepard. I represent the estate of Margaret Prescott." I froze. Margaret. My sister, who hadn't spoken to me in over 2 decades, who stormed out of our mother's funeral, who said things you don't come back from and never did. My sister, who I sometimes dreamed about on cold nights, who I occasionally searched for online but never dared to message. "I'm sorry to inform you," Mark said with quiet formality, "that your sister passed away 2 weeks ago. She named you as the sole beneficiary of her estate." My mind couldn't catch up. I didn't even know she was still, I stammered. "She left you a letter," he added, pulling a sealed envelope from his case. "And a check. 350 Ling." I stared at him. Surely. He meant $3. "500 or 300. Ora mistake." But no, $350,000? In crisp black print? I held the check like it might burst into flames. My hands trembled as I opened the letter. "Dear Emma, if you're reading this, it means I didn't outlive my stubbornness. I wanted to call you so many times. But pride is a heavy anchor. And I carried it too long. You were always the better sister. Even when I pretended otherwise. I know we can't undo what's done. But I hope this gift helps you live the kind of life you put on pause for everyone else. Take a cruise. Eat pasta in Italy. Or just sit by the sea and read without checking the clock. Live boldly. For both of us. Love. Margaret." By the time I finished, my hands were damp, and the edges of the letter curled from tears. The room around me faded. I could smell our childhood lemon cookies in Mom's kitchen. The old books we used to fight over. The dried lilacs Margaret always hung above her bed. I hadn't thought of those lilacs in 30 years. How strange, how heartbreakingly strange, that the first real moment of connection we'd had in decades came from beyond the grave. And it arrived not with bitterness, but with a blessing. That night, I sat by my window long after sunset, watching the ocean dissolve into stars. I whispered to the darkness like I used to whisper to Richard's photo. "Margaret." I said softly, "What would you have done if you'd had a second chance?" And then I asked myself a question even harder. What would I do? Now that I have one, it took me 3 weeks to decide. 3 weeks of pacing the courtyard at Coastal Pines, watching the hummingbirds zip through the gardenia bushes. 3 weeks of folding and unfolding Margaret's letter, of staring at that check like it was both a miracle and a test. And finally, I knew. I wasn't going to buy a yacht or fly to Italy or move to one of those over 60 cruise ships that circle the Caribbean all year. I had something else in mind. Something more difficult. More personal. I would go to Palo Alto. Unannounced. I would show up on Lindsay's doorstep. Gift in hand, not just the money, but a second chance. For both of us, I imagined it would be simple. Maybe even sweet. But life, as I should have known by now, doesn't move in straight lines. The day I arrived, her street looked like something out of a luxury real estate catalog, manicured lawns, minimalist or numbers, and cars I couldn't name. Her house had white siding and matte black windows. Cold. Perfect. Empty. Brandon, my son-in-law, opened the door. He looked surprised. Not delighted. "Emma," he blinked. I didn't know you were coming." I didn't either, I replied with a smile. But here I am. Lindsay appeared moments later, barefoot and wearing Bluetooth earbuds, her eyes darting between me and her phone. "Mom," she said, voice thin with confusion. "Are you okay? Is something wrong?" "No. I wanted to see you. Thought it was time for a visit. And maybe a talk still." She hesitated, her posture tensing before she stepped aside. "Of course. Come in." The house was beautiful. Spotless. Sterile. No signs of children, no mess. No warmth. No photos of us. Not even one. She offered tea. We sat across from each other at her marble kitchen island. She asked how I'd been. How Monterey was. It was small talk. Rehearsed and hollow. I waited for the moment, the one where I'd pull out the envelope with the check, tell her about Margaret's death, and share my idea giving a part of it to Lindsay. To help ease her stress. Maybe buy time for real conversations again. But something in her voice, something tight, distracted, and too careful, made me hesitate. That night, they offered me the guest room. It looked like a model home clean sheets. Decorative pillows. No soul. I lay awake, heart beating too loudly. Unsure of why I felt more like a guest in a hotel than a mother in her daughter's house. And that's when I heard it. From the living room. Their voices, Lindsay and Brandon, low but tense. "I told you she wouldn't stay long." Brandon muttered it. "Just play, nice. We can't let her know about the credit cards." Lindsay whispered. "She has money now." "I'm sure of it. Did you see her coat? That's new." "She wouldn't just show up unless." My breath caught. "It's not like we'd be stealing." Brandon said, "It's her daughter. She'll help." I couldn't hear the rest. The blood was rushing too loudly in my ears. I sat there in the dark, staring at the ceiling. This wasn't a family reunion. This was a transaction in disguise. And I wasn't sure if I had the strength to stay one more night. I didn't sleep at all. By morning, the sun was peeking through the blinds like it didn't know the world had shifted. I moved slowly, silently, folding the bedsheet as neatly as I could, smoothing out the corners, like it would somehow smooth the ache in my chest. I had come here with a heart full of hope, a letter of forgiveness, and a check that could have changed everything. But what I found was not reconciliation. It was calculation. At breakfast, Lindsay poured me coffee. All smiles. As if the night before hadn't happened. "So," she said, taking a seat across from me. "Any plans for the day?" I studied her for a moment, her neat hair, her too bright tone, the slight stiffness in her shoulders. "Actually," I said gently, "I've decided I'll be heading back today." Her smile faltered. "Oh, so soon I think it's for the best?" She nodded, biting the edge of her lip. "You'll keep in touch." Though, of course, but we both knew that meant less than it used to. She didn't ask why I came. She didn't ask if something was wrong. And I didn't tell her. That afternoon, while she and Brandon were out running errands, or perhaps discussing me somewhere else, I packed my bag. I took Margaret's letter, the check, and the faint remains of a dream I had carried here. Foolish and fragile. Then I saw it tucked under the guest bed, behind the leg of the nightstand. A folder. My name was written on the tab in Lindsay's handwriting. Curiosity tugged at me. I pulled it out. Inside were papers. Printouts of financial statements. Credit card debt. A typed list of potential sources of assistance, elderly relatives. And one note. Scribbled in blue ink. If mom stays long term, talk to her about signing over power of attorney. Mention her safety at Coastal Pines. Stress support. My hands shook. Not just with betrayal, but with something colder. Fear. I could see the road they were paving. Stone by stone. A conversation about my well-being. A signature. A slow, careful transfer of control onto my life. My voice, my money, belong to someone else? No, not again. I had already surrendered too much to age, to grief, to silence. I would not surrender this. By 6:45 p.m. I was gone. I left a note on the guest bed. Short and clean, Lindsay, I love you. But I cannot stay in a place where I feel like a burden or a bank account. I need time. I hope someday we can find each other again. But not like this. Mom outside. The air was cool. My suitcase rolled softly behind me. I didn't know exactly where I was going. But I knew where I wouldn't return. At the end of the street. I hailed a cab. Where to? Ma'am, the driver asked. I looked out the window at the glowing houses. The curated lives. The perfect exteriors. Then I took a breath and said the first place that came to mind anywhere that feels real. And just like that, I started over not because I had no one, but because I still had myself. The taxi dropped me off 2 towns over in a place called Millhaven, a sleepy coastal village with weathered sidewalks and flower boxes hanging from every porch. It smelled like salt air, old books, and cinnamon. The kind of place where no one was in a hurry and everyone waved, even if they didn't know your name. I had no reservation. No plan. Just a small suitcase, and the check still folded in the inside pocket of my coat. I walked into the first inn I saw, a charming White House turned bed and breakfast called the Sea Glass. A young woman with a soft voice and freckles checked me in without asking too many questions. That night, I fell asleep to the sound of waves brushing the rocks, wrapped in a quilt that smelled faintly of lavender and sunshine. In the morning, I knew exactly who to call. June, I said, holding my phone to my ear, hands trembling, just a little. It's Emma. A pause. Then a gasp. Emma Collins Lord. I thought you were off in Florida somewhere learning to play mahjong, I laughed. And for the first time in days, it didn't sound hollow. June and I had been friends since college. We lost touch after Richard passed and life scattered us in different directions. But she was the kind of woman who picked up like no time had passed at all. You come stay with me, she said without hesitation. You always had a soft spot for the sea. And I've got an extra bedroom with your name on it. 2 days later, I moved into June's cozy, paint-chipped cottage at the edge of Millhaven's harbor. She gave me the upstairs room, the one with the blue walls and a view of fishing boats bobbing in the dock. We spent the days walking by the shore, sipping coffee, talking about everything and nothing. I told her everything, the letter, the money, Lindsay. The night I walked away, she didn't judge. She just listened. One hand always resting gently on mine. Then one morning, over cinnamon scones, she asked, So, what now? What are you going to do with your second chance? I stared at her. That word again, chance. It kept showing up like a signpost on a winding road. I didn't want to waste this one. So, I started making a plan. With June's help, I hired a lawyer, a kind, sharp-eyed woman named Natalie who helped me set up protections. Power of attorney only if I said so. A trust for Lindsay, maybe later. But for now, the money would be used for one thing only, freedom. I applied to a new retirement community in Millhaven, not like Coastal Pines, but one that valued independence and creativity. They had watercolor classes, a library with ocean views, and a dog named Rufus who greeted every guest like royalty. And I signed up. Not because I had to, but because I chose to. For the first time in years, I wasn't reacting to life. I was shaping it. One morning, standing on the porch with June, I looked out at the sea and said quietly, "I thought my story was over, but maybe this is just a new chapter." She smiled, wrapping an arm around me. "No, Emma," she said. "It's a whole new book." 2 months passed in Millhaven like a warm tide, slow, steady, healing. My days began with sunlight spilling through lace curtains, the distant sound of gulls, and Rufus the golden retriever curling at my feet during breakfast in the sunroom. At Seabreeze Haven, my new retirement community, I painted again for the first time in 30 years. I wasn't good, but I smiled every time the brush touched the page. It wasn't about skill anymore. It was about breath. I had just begun rebuilding my sense of peace when Lindsay called. "Hi, Mom," she said, her voice softer than I remembered. I got your note." Silence filled the line like fog. "I'm sorry," she said finally. "I wasn't thinking clearly. Brandon's been under so much pressure and, well, none of that is your fault. I just wanted you to know I've been thinking about you. And I miss you." My heart cracked a little. There, it was the apology I'd longed for. But tangled in it was a net of old habits, soft guilt, and unspoken intentions. "Thank you," I replied gently. "That means more than you know. I'd love to visit," she added quickly. "Maybe bring Brandon. We could talk, really talk. Maybe look at options together. For the future?" There it was. I could hear it behind the words. The plan wasn't gone. Just delayed. Dressed in warmth now. But underneath still the same structure. Still control. Still the idea that I was something to be managed, arranged, decided for. And for the first time in my life, I didn't shrink from it. I didn't pretend I didn't hear it. I didn't rationalize it away. I spoke with a voice I didn't know I still had. "Lindsay," I said calmly, "I want you to come visit. I want to rebuild something honest between us. But I need you to understand something first." She was quiet. "I'm not here to be rescued," I said, "and I won't sign anything. I've taken care of myself for a long time. I have support. I have a will. And I have plans. You are welcome in my life. Not in control of it." I waited, expecting the line to go cold. Instead, she exhaled. Slowly. "I think I needed to hear that," she whispered. "I'm sorry. Mom, I've been scared. Scared of failing. Scared of not doing enough. I thought helping you meant taking over. I didn't realize that what you needed was space." That surprised me. And it softened something I didn't realize I was still guarding. She came to visit 2 weeks later. Alone. We sat on the porch at Seabreeze Haven, watching Rufus chase butterflies. We talked about art, about Margaret, about the parts of ourselves we had buried under expectations. She didn't ask about money. She just asked if we could start over. And for the first time in years, I said yes, not out of guilt, or obligation, or hope for something impossible, but because I believed we could, and because I had drawn the line not with anger, but with love. It was a golden afternoon in late spring when I finally stood in front of the easel on the cliff's edge. The wind brushed against my cheeks. and the sea below shimmered like a living painting. My hands moved slowly, almost meditatively. As I painted the curve of the coastline, it was my third attempt at capturing it, and still, I hadn't gotten it right. But for the first time, I didn't mind. Behind me, laughter floated from the garden patio. June and her bridge club were deep into their usual Saturday games. And Lindsay, yes. Lindsay was helping serve lemonade. She had been coming every other weekend. Just her. We didn't talk about money anymore. We talked about books. About dreams. About the small, good things we once took for granted. She even started painting with me. She was worse than I was, and she laughed at herself with a lightness I hadn't heard since she was a teenager. It wasn't perfect. There were still gaps. Still quiet moments that hung a little heavy. But we were stitching something back together, not the same fabric, but something new. Something honest. I received a letter that week. Handwritten. From a woman named Tessa Monroe, Margaret's old neighbor in Oregon. Emma. I was with Margaret near the end. She spoke of you often. She didn't know how to fix what had broken. But she wanted you to know. She never stopped loving you. She said you were the one who taught her how to ride a bike. And how to read Nancy Drew in secret under the covers. She said she never forgot. I hope you're okay. I hope you're free. Warmly. Tessa, I folded the letter and placed it next to Margaret's original one in my nightstand. My sister difficult. Wounded. Fierce had given me more than money. She'd given me permission. Permission to live. To let go. To choose myself again. And in doing so, I had learned something I wish I had known earlier, something I hope you. Dear listener, never forget, you are allowed to start over. Not just once. Not just when you're young, but whenever you need to. You are allowed to draw boundaries. To say no even to people you love. Especially to people who assume love means control. You are allowed to reclaim your story. No matter how much of it you've handed away, the money didn't save me. The people didn't fix me. The choice did. The choice to walk away. The choice to begin again. The choice to be brave. Even when I was shaking. The choice to believe I was still worth something even in the final chapters of my life. So I ask you now, what have you been putting off? What story have you been telling yourself that no longer fits? And when was the last time you gave yourself permission to begin again? Because it's never too late. Not for love. Not for healing. Not for you. My name is Emma Collins. And this is not the end. This is where I truly began. The lesson it's never too late to choose yourself. Emma's journey reminds us of a truth many forget, that no matter how far along life takes us, we still have the right to choose. To choose freedom over fear. Dignity over dependence. And healing over history. She was a woman who had forgiven, and stayed silent for too long. But when the moment came, she walked away, not out of anger, but out of clarity. She drew a line, not to shut people out, but to let herself in. Her story teaches us that starting over isn't a failure. It's a form of courage. Whether you're 25 or 75, you have the power to say, this is not how my story ends. We often wait for someone to give us permission. Emma found out the truth. You are the only one who needs to grant it. So what will you choose? Will you keep living by the script others wrote for you, or will you pick up the pen and start writing your own ending? Because it's never too late, not for freedom, not for love, and never for you.